And we are live.
Yep, I see it.
I am so excited for this, Dave. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a ton of fun. So, as many of you know, listening to this, we dive into what I like to call the dip. Right when times are at their toughest, the decisions that winners and successful people make to build their way out. And this realization came to me when I noticed or observed that people are attracted to the success, but they actually connect to the struggle. And so we spend a lot of time talking about that. And your examples are just absolutely incredible, but I don't want to spoil them for people who might not know you. So, so let's start with two questions. Where'd you grow up? And give me one or two sort of your big bullet points, your big success moments that people kind of know you by in your industry specifically.
Yeah, so my story is maybe a little unique, not per se to your military guys, but I grew up traveling the world. My parents are first generation Americans. So both my grandparent on both sides of my family, my grandparents are from Mexico. But my parents, my mother and father, went on to put themselves through college and were actually U.S. diplomats. They served under 5 or 6 different U.S. presidents around the globe. So I grew up overseas, and it was awesome. And I think at an early age, I had a pretty good idea what I wanted to do. I was living in Costa Rica, and I met, at 15, you're very impressionable, right? And I
Right.
met this dude. He was yoked. He was working at the U.S. Embassy. He was wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and he had a freaking gun on his hip. And I'm
You're like,
like, that
how do
dude's
I do that?
badass, man. Yeah, yeah. What is that? And he was actually a DEA agent there on a temporary assignment, and that was it, man. I started, gobbling up anything I could find on DEA and CIA and FBI. He met a lot of FBI agents, as we traveled across the globe. But anyway, that kind of led into my career in law enforcement. And when I started that, I already had an eye forward, knowing that I was going to use law enforcement as a springboard, but I wanted to work overseas in hostile, more unpredictable environments. I knew that from the beginning, but I did do about 12 years as active law enforcement, just under 9 years in North Las Vegas, most of that time with the SWAT team. And then I did 2 years in Seattle with the King County Sheriff's Office. Then I started my own thing. So,
and we're going to get into fight back because that's a huge deal for me and what attracted me to your
thank you.
story in the first place. Quick side note of North Las Vegas for people who haven't been there. I have a great story. I had moved to Las Vegas for a short period in my life, and I had to go get a driver's license. So I went on the website, the DMV website, saw the one with the shortest line. I walked in, and I am in a full suit. Right, it's Vegas, it's hot, baby, and I'm wearing full suit and tie. And I go and sit down, and I'm counting the amount of women with face tattoos, full-on face tattoos, right? And without overgeneralizing here, I find that women are a little smarter than men. They tend to tattoo their face a little less than men do. Okay, a lot less than men do. And when you're starting to see multiple women with teardrops tattooed to their face, I started to reevaluate exactly what DMV I was parked in. So that was a really eye-opening experience. I had never seen that side of Vegas before. It was a little grittier than I was expecting as a guy walking in there with a suit on. And by the way, I stuck out like a sore thumb.
Let me tell you, that suit probably saved you from getting jacked, dude, because they probably thought you were a Fed. They probably thought you were an FBI agent, because no regular Joe Blow white dude just walks in there,
Oh, there's no question. I walked in, I was like, oh boy, one of these things.
Where am I?
And it is me.
Yeah. It was a rough town. I started there in January of '92, and I'm telling you, man, that was back in the cowboy era when it came to law enforcement in Vegas, and it was a rough town for sure.
Yeah. That's incredible. Okay, so let's back up. 92 was when you got first into law enforcement.
Yeah, officially got hired in North Las Vegas in 1992. Yeah.
All right. So tell me about those years, because you were there for a number of years you went on to work with SWAT. Tell me a little bit about that
Yeah.
journey, right? Tell me
Yeah.
the high and a low point there.
Okay. I'll real quick, well, I should say real quick, but I know we have a lot to talk about, but to this day, I will tell you this, and I've been all over the world in every environment, just insane stuff. I'm sure we'll hit on that. But to this day, I still miss, those times when I was, on patrol or working with the police department, especially one that was as busy as North Las Vegas. But, I started my career out. It was really interesting. I hit the streets out of the academy during the Rodney King riots.
Oof.
And yeah, so, a lot of people think that only was in LA. No, they were burning their own neighborhoods and rioting in Las Vegas as well. They were shooting at cops. I remember my very first, I walked out of the police department, my very first shift. So imagine I'm rookie, new.
Yeah, it's
They said,
greasy.
hey, they said, your FTO, your field train officer, he's on a call right now. You're not going to get graded for the day, your first day as a cop. We're going to put you with a senior cop. You're just going to go out there right now because, dude, we're having, this is in the middle of the Rodney King stuff.
Right.
We walk out to the car. I put my, my brand new, equipment bag in the car. We get in, and over the radio, you hear this officer yelling that he's in a foot pursuit. He's northbound approaching Nelson off of MLK. I can still remember that, dude. My very first radio traffic.
Wow.
and he, while he's saying he's in foot pursuit, you hear gunfire over the radio, and the guy's chasing is shooting at him. And anyway, he was over in near Gerson Park, which was a GPK Crip area. And I just remember that being my first call. I got in the car, we run code, which was in itself amazing. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is awesome. We get there, and this senior cop, now we're creeping through the neighborhood with our windows down. It's in the afternoon. And I just remember this. He looks at me and he goes, what are you doing? And dude, I'm brand new. I've been a cop for 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm looking for this officer that was in this foot pursuit. And he's like, get your damn gun out. What are you doing? He wanted me to have my gun in my hand so that I was ready to respond, because literally we were being shot at. Cops were being shot at in the neighborhoods. Wow. Anyway, that was my first day. That was my first 5 minutes. And I will tell you that, I don't know if I was a shit magnet or what, but I had an exciting, super awesome time in North Las Vegas. I worked with some great guys, and it was non-stop. And you talk about highlights and stuff like that. I will tell you, one of the coolest things that happened to me that was a game changer early in my career. I had an opportunity to go onto the SWAT team. Typically, it takes 4 years on patrol before you're even eligible. But back in the early 90s, Las Vegas had a construction boom. The neighborhoods were just exploding and growing. And in North Las Vegas, there was a significant influx of Hispanic people that were moving in, a lot of workers. And I spoke fluent Spanish, and not a lot of guys on the department did at that time. And everyone knew I wanted to go to SWAT. So I had an opportunity to go through the process a little bit earlier, because they were desperate for a Spanish speaker to be in the lineup. It's called the stack or the stick right on the door, so that someone could communicate directly with these guys during a crisis. So I went to, Las Vegas Metro has an amazing SWAT school, probably one of the best in the country.
I've heard that.
By the way, we had a great relationship with the Las Vegas SWAT team. My brother was actually a cop in Vegas as well at the same time. Oh, wow. So we're 2 years apart. He was Las Vegas Metro. I was North Las Vegas. We were actually on the SWAT teams at the same time in these two neighboring departments. Yeah, it was awesome. So, but anyway, let me jump back. So I did not go to SWAT school in Las Vegas. They sent me to LA County to go through SWAT school with the LA SEB. And that's a Special Enforcement Bureau. Those dudes are, they're the best. Honestly, because I've been to more than one of their schools. I actually went back to their instructor school. They legitimately are one of the busiest SWAT teams in the world. They're doing it every day, all day. They're very progressive. They're up on tactics. But here's what, we talk about like highlights in your career. I remember looking at these guys and just being like in awe of them while I was at their SWAT school.
Mhm.
And there was an incident, not an incident, but I went through the shoot house with my partner, and something happened in the shoot house, and they pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, did you have a misfire at the door?" And I said, "No, I actually took a shot at the door." When the door opened, if you can imagine the door frame, when it opened, there's about an inch of space there.
Yep.
And before I had my partner move, I could see that there was a hostage target about 15 feet away through that crack in that door. And so instead of going in the room and then shooting on the move, I had an easy shot. There's no way that that target could have seen where I was at. I took
Right.
the headshot with an MP5 through that space in the door.
Mhm.
So I thought, now I'm in trouble, because I'm like, no, I didn't have a misfire. I took the shot from this gap
Yep.
between the door and the frame. And they walked down there and they looked and they're like, huh, we've never had anyone do that before. So again, like I'm thinking, oh crap, it's a safety violation.
Right.
No, it wasn't. They said, guys, you never know. You take what it gives you. You take what the
Sure.
situation gives you. Make it happen.
Yep.
And instead of getting in trouble, they were like, we just saw something we haven't seen before. Now, I got to tell you, the average time on the SWAT team at SEB, their average guy had 12 years on the SWAT team. A lot of them stay for their whole career there. These
Yep.
dudes are amazing. But what I learned from them is they were willing to learn from the newest guy. They were open, and they didn't hold themselves on, up here on some pedestal.
Yep.
They were humble, they were gracious, they were encouraging to all of us. It wasn't, they weren't yelling at us, they weren't trying to fail us out of the class. It wasn't like we were going through buds, which is
Right.
that's a whole different thing, right? Buds, you're
Right.
trying to qualify who's going to be your teammate in a bad
Right.
place. We were already qualified. We were in SWAT school now. We
Right.
did the qualification at our department. So immediately I thought, is this the type of guy I want to be? And the answer was yes. I want to be the guy that's always open, doesn't matter who brings it, to new progressive information. And I certainly don't want to lead by being a hard ass, you
Right.
know. Anyway, so it was just really impactful, and it helped me decide the type of guy I wanted to be as a tactical, operator on a SWAT team. So anyway, that was definitely one of my highlights.
That is amazing. First off, um, I know that the LA SWAT is considered to be like one of the best, if not the best, in the entire world. That they train hard, but they get to use it often, which is sort of a good thing and a bad thing,
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it. But the point you brought up about having the humility and what I call the growth mindset to go, oh, wow, this is interesting. He was able to jump the shot effectively by taking it through the crack in the door, as opposed to waiting and breaching and clearing, which takes an extra beat and a half, whatever it might be. That can oftentimes be the between life and
Yeah.
death, right? Right. It all comes down to that. So that's, I don't, for people who don't have a military background or haven't worked with Leos in the past, that's a big deal. That's a very progressive way, because typically people in that industry it's all about those SOPs, right? It's just, there's a way we do it. This is how we do it. We repeat it. We drill that SOP over and over and over, standard operating procedure, over and over, and we don't deviate, right? But to your point, there was a creative moment there that gave you an advantage. That it was open for that minute, pun intended. That's a very progressive way of looking at that, because you traditionally don't find that in those small communities.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I, something you just said, I think is worth repeating. In this industry, when it comes to, like, let's just talk about specifically the Las Vegas Valley and these SWAT teams that are there. They do have protocols. They do have policies and procedures and fundamentals that all of the tactical operations are based off of. But I
Mhm.
will tell you this: in 12 or 1,500 entries that I did over those almost 8 years on SWAT, not there was never one that was exactly like the one before.
Of course.
Even and even hey, I'll tell you this, Pierre, even even the places that we hit repeatedly. I mean, there were a couple locations that we hit 2 or 3 times. We knew the layout per memory,
Right.
but that what happened inside was never the same. The
That's amazing.
threat was never the same. It's a very, very fluid and very dynamic operation. And so every guy, yeah, we operate on the same fundamentals, we follow the same protocols and procedures,
Right.
but every guy is making individual decisions that benefit the team.
Mhm.
And it's crazy how quickly that happens.
By the way, if you're in an establishment, a residence, a building in which SWAT needs to come knocking on your door multiple times, you need to reevaluate your life. Because it's
they
bad
hey,
enough
they
if they
didn't.
come once,
You want to you
but
want to know what's funny? They never reevaluated their life. They reevaluated how their doors work.
yeah,
They kept reinforcing stuff, and we kept having to go, figure out a different way to get in, because you're hitting that place again, and now they're realizing that you'll just come over and blow out the back sliding glass door. So
right.
now they got a metal screen on the door. So you got reinforced front door, metal screen on the back door, and we'll find a way in.
Of
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, how else is that going to go? It's only going to go one way.
Yeah,
It's only going to
yeah.
slow you down for a minute. I mean, come on, guys. Okay, so you're there in SWAT for a while. I really want to get into the meat of where this is going. You're at SWAT for how many years?
I did SWAT for about 7 years there at that department. Yeah.
And so after that 7-year period, where were you sort of mentally and emotionally? Because that is ultra taxing on the body and even more so on the mind. And I have a lot of friends that are Leos in various agencies throughout the country. And one thing I'm always impressed with, and I don't think that civies really understand, is Leos by and large deal with people at their worst all the time, right? That doesn't mean
Yeah.
bad guys all the time, but just people in moments of crisis all of the time. They live in chaos and crisis for most of their career, right? And so for most of us in sort of normal jobs, we don't really get much of that experience other than once or twice a year or two. And you guys do that 8-10 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? It's a completely different way that it just wears and grinds on your mind and your body. Not so much as physically, of course, it's a very physically demanding job,
Sure.
but experiencing that over and over and over, it sort of wears on you. It carries a burden on you. And your ability to manage through that is really, really incredible. So my heart goes out to all of you guys. It's very impressive what you do. But where are you after being there for 7 years? Where are you sort of mentally, physically? How are you feeling at that moment?
That sometimes I'll tell you this, I didn't know. I thought there was something wrong with me because I was one of the few guys. I don't, to this day, I haven't really had like PTSD. I don't have nightmares. I haven't experienced what a lot of guys, guys have been in shooting. And look, I've been a contractor overseas, Afghanistan, Iraq, and all over Africa. We're training teams. We're in Brazil all the time, and those guys, they're getting ambushed as much as the guys were in Mexico that I trained. So
Mhm.
I mean, I'm still around all this stuff. It hasn't. I've been fortunate. It hasn't really affected me, I don't think. And I will tell you this, because this is a really good question. I there was a time when I thought something was wrong with me, because you're supposed
Sure.
to, there's some shit you're gonna see that you're supposed to come home and be like, crap, I just need some time.
Right.
And I just never experienced that. I never experienced coming home and going, honey, don't talk to me. I just need some time.
Right.
Even after bad stuff. I was just like, I'm good. Now I'm with my kids. Now I'm with my wife. I didn't realize that maybe I was, in that way, maybe I was in a small percentage. And then my brother was experiencing the same thing. He, gosh dang it, I think he got nominated. I think he actually won the Medal of Honor at Las Vegas Metro. He saved a hostage's life with his pistol. A double homicide suspect was holding this girl hostage, and he didn't think twice. He did it, and he never had ill effects either. So we're both kind of like, something wrong with us. And then I read the book on combat, on killing.
Yes. I've
Okay.
read them both.
And
Yep.
okay, Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, who, by the way, maybe we'll get into it later on. I was actually invited to meet with him here in Utah when I built my armored van, and we hit it off. He's a great guy. But let me come back to this. So I read the book on killing,
Yep.
and I called my brother. I'm like, dude, you got to read this book. We're fine. We're
Yep.
okay. There's nothing wrong with us. We fit in this certain percentage. And I have a friend that's been a SEAL for 22 years. You need to talk to him. His name is Omar Vieira. He's a commander for 14 years, thousands of direct action missions. You would not know. And even Omar and I, we spent a lot of time together in the last probably 2 years, and including a couple long drives. And he doesn't have those effects, and he's gone through way worse stuff than I have. And we don't feel guilty for not feeling that way. We understand. Thank goodness, because I'm telling you, I would still be wondering if I'm okay. There's something wrong with me if it wasn't for reading on killing and on combat. Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman really hit it on the nose. So that was a long answer. Sorry about that, but
no.
I just and by the way, that makes me more empathetic to guys and gals that are similar. Can I share one more real quick personal story with you?
That's what this is about. Get into it.
Oh, okay. So I don't know if it's genetic. I would like to know. So anyone that watches this, let me know if this is genetic, because my brother and I were very similar. And my daughter, who is, I've got 2 daughters. One makes a living as a model. She's an Instagram influencer. And it's crazy how much money, how well they can do. Her sister, they look alike. Her sister is a freaking cop here in Utah.
Couldn't be further apart.
5'4", former college soccer player. She's a cop here. She's carrying on the family tradition. And I'll tell you what happened to kind of emphasize this point. She had just gotten done with field training, right? So she's basically on her own now. And someone from her department called me and said, "Hey, Dave, Courtney responded. She was the primary on a really nasty fatal accident today." And she crawled in the car, and while she was trying to comfort the lady, she passed away. So, they're saying, "We just want you to know, just keep an eye on her, because she's a rookie." So I'm like, okay. So that evening, she came home. She worked day shift. She came over to our house. Her and her husband don't live very far away. She came over to our house for dinner, and she goes, "Hey, Dad, can I talk to you in the office?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go."
Yep.
She's got to share with somebody.
Yep.
I'm like, "Sure, what's going on?" She goes, "I just want to tell you about something that happened today." And I'm like, "Okay." So we come in here where I'm at right now, and we sit down, and I'm ready for this real vulnerable moment. And I'm going to comfort her. And she goes, "So, Dad, there's a bad accident today." And I crawled in there, and I was, trying to help this lady out. And anyway, it didn't work out. Didn't work out for her. And I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, "So yeah, that was my first fatal." I'm like, "Okay, are you okay?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "But I can't get the glass out of my hair. I've showered like 4 times, and there's still glass flakes in my hair." Right? And I'm like, "This is what we're talking about?" And she's like,
a concern.
"Yeah." She's like, "I know you've done this before. What do you do? Is there like a special shampoo or something you can use to get that debris out?" I'm like, "No, you always wear a baseball cap when you crawl in to a vehicle, anywhere, to keep stuff out of your hair." She's like, "Oh, all right." End of conversation.
Wow.
And so I'm like, okay. So I call up my buddy and my brother, who is still a cop here. Actually, he spent a little bit of time as a cop in Utah after Vegas. I call him up because he knew about it, and I'm like, "Guys, she's fine." She's fine. And I think that she's going to be very similar to that. She's already in her 3 years seen pretty nasty stuff. So I don't think there's anything wrong with people that don't have issues like that, but a lot of it has to do with, again, I'm going to come back to Grossman. I think he helped us understand ourselves, and we know it's okay. Right. Because a lot of people that run to the fight don't, or have issues, but then there's a number of us that don't. And I don't know why. I think it's just part of how we are.
So I recommend both of those books. They're absolutely outstanding. I was fortunate enough to meet Lieutenant Grossman once at a speaking event. Really, really interesting. I'll note, though, going a little bit further back in history, and some of the people who listen to this podcast will roll their eyes at this point because I bring it up so often, but Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius, arguably the greatest ruler of all time. Right? Second largest land controlling ruler ever behind Genghis Khan. And Meditations, his book, is so interesting because it was never meant to be a book. It was literally his journal. It was notes to himself, right? And you get a really interesting look into the mind of the most powerful person in the world. And he was known for Stoic philosophy, which is, I hate using the word philosophy because it makes you think deep thoughts about thinking, when Stoicism is about an operational manual for how to get through life. And one of the things he talks about often there is death, which was very common occurrence back then, and
Right.
being happy, and how you can be, how do you wrestle when you have death around you all the time and you're happy? How does that work, right? And how you get there sort of mentally is you surrender yourself to the things that you cannot control. You say, listen, that woman in that car accident, she didn't make it. That's very unfortunate. You have surrendered to the fact that that is an inevitable, that there is nothing that you could have done in any way, shape, or form to adjust that outcome. Now, that sounds obvious, but it's actually really hard to do for some people, right? Some people become emotionally invested in these types of scenarios. But through listening to Marcus Aurelius and the way he approaches those problems is very similar to what you're talking about, which is what makes it such an interesting book, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing to listen to this person talk about not wanting to get out of bed in the morning because it's warm and cozy, and out of the bed is cold, right? And that's amazing because he's the most powerful person in the world, right? And yet he also talks about surrendering to things like death, right? And your ability to compartmentalize that and actually give, he uses the term give it away, surrender to
Yeah.
that really keeps you of a healthy mind and body.
Man, dude, don't be distracted by the shit that you can't control. It's going to happen anyway. There's a picture right behind me. Well, I don't know if you can see it. It's up here with the three dudes. Can you see it? Anyway,
Yep.
one of those guys. So I got to tell you this really quick because, dude, you made a really good point. One of the guys in that picture is a former SEAL Team 6 guy.
Wow.
And then the other guy is a former SEAL Team 2 guy. And then you got this little Mexican dude from Utah in the middle with no military background. We were running an operation right there on the Syrian border. And I maybe I'm not even supposed to say that, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It's been a while ago. And the guy from Tom, his name is Tom. He said, he didn't know me that well. And we'd already been in some pretty bad stuff as contractors. And my best friend, Maddie from SEAL Team 2, he knew me, and he always, he'd vouch for me because you're bringing a non-SEAL into an environment where, typically a SWAT guy doesn't, but by this point I'd done it for a few years. And, but I just remember something because this guy, Tommy, was so concerned because he didn't know me that he knew we were going to get engaged somewhere on this route that we were going to be on. And he was so concerned that he came over and he just looked at me and he goes, "Hey, bro," now he's a big dude. And he just goes, "Hey, I want to tell you something." He's like, "You're going to die, right? You're going to die." And I'm looking at him. I'm like, "Great pep talk, dude," because I really don't know him.
Right.
And I'm like, "Yeah." I just didn't know where he was going, right? And then he's like, "Good. So get over it and do your job." And that was a light bulb moment for me.
100%.
What he was saying was, dude, don't worry right now about getting killed on this mission because you're not going to be able to focus and do your job. Right. And he was so worried because here's the thing about the SEALs that I've learned having so many SEAL buddies. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, chubby, skinny, 5'4", 6'4". It doesn't matter. None of that matters because if you're standing there at the end of the day when Buds is over and you get a trident, they don't see those things. They just see a brother that's as qualified as they are.
Yep.
So you can't bring an outside guy into an environment like that in Iraq or Afghanistan and have them just be like, "Yeah, come on in and run it off with us."
Right.
So I got it and I understood it. And what he was saying was, you do your job, don't be distracted. And I loved it. And since then, I've heard other guys say it. I've heard Marcus Luttrell say it in interviews. I know Jocko said it. Yep. A lot of my SEAL buddies have said, there's like, dude, the moment you embrace, "Hey, I'm going to die."
Yep.
And you're okay and you put it away, you can focus on what you're supposed to be doing. And in those environments, dude, you cannot be distracted.
Not at all.
So anyway, That was a light bulb moment for me. As a SWAT operator, we never had it be that intense. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna out SWAT guys here. So we'll probably get some pretty bad feedback. But dude, as cool as it is and as sexy as SWAT is, it's easy. Now I don't mean that to be diminutive to being a SWAT operator. It's not that. That's not what I'm saying. It
Right.
takes a special guy, and it takes a lot of hard work, or gal, and commitment, and you have to be a team player. Don't get me wrong, the qualification is tough. What I'm talking about is a typical operation, because we know the layout. We can pull a blueprint. If it's a barricade, we can take our time. You got a negotiator. We can introduce gas. We've got explosive entry. You got 12 highly trained operators against an untrained idiot. We'll figure it out.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, I got dropped in an environment where the bad guy picked when, the bad guy picked where, the bad guy picked how, and we were always outnumbered. And somehow these dudes always won.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And what it was, and I do a lot of public speaking on this, what it was when I came back, where I realized there was a difference, was this: everything a Ranger, a SEAL, a special ops guy, a Green Beret, recon, I don't want to leave anyone out. Everything that those guys do is motivated by how it will help their brother stay alive. Nothing that they do is for them. Nothing they do is about them. It's, one thing you'll learn in this industry is it's never the guy that cuts corners that gets killed. Never. And it's that way in business, dude. It is.
Yes.
Okay. You've worked with people that will ride your coattails if you're busting your ass.
100%.
And you're the guy that will pay because someone on your team isn't doing their job.
That's right.
It translates, whether it's sports, whether it's a special operation, whether it's business. And so what I tell companies when I speak is like, let me tell you what I learned by being with these guys. It was another level of tactical operation. And everything was motivated by keeping their brother alive. They would do everything in their power, leave nothing to chance, so they didn't fail their brother. Imagine if we all worked with that attitude. Imagine if everyone came to work, or you're with your football team, or and all you were doing was, dude, I will not fail you.
Yep. So
you can't lose.
So to put a fine point on that, I'll draw sort of the counterpoint here, which is there's a great book out there called Silos. And it is pointing out this exact problem within business, in that you have these silos within a big business: finance, biz dev, accounting, marketing, etc. These groups inside one organization that fight against each other. They fight against each other. They jockey position. They want to take credit for certain things that happen within the business, etc. They're not team players, as you mentioned. And now this typically happens with very, very large businesses. And this is one of the very common ways that very large businesses fail. And one of the things that happens is when the organization, and you can draw a direct comparison here, and I'm very much trying to, between special operators, your world, and the business world, which is, if ego takes over and the business thinks we're the biggest, we're the best, we're the baddest company that's out there, then the organizations that makes up that company, sales, marketing, accounting, etc., try to jockey for position, for power, for clout, for more money, etc., and stop working for the company's greater good and start working on their division's good. That infighting ultimately helps that company fail. And so let me give you a couple of examples of companies that you never thought could have failed because they were so big. So if you asked your grandparents what was the most powerful company in the world, they would have told you a company called American Steel. American Steel manufactured more steel, which was the primary builder, right? We were in the Industrial Revolution. We were building like crazy, skyscrapers, the whole nine. That was American Steel. You walk around and ask 100 Americans if they've ever heard of the company American Steel, they'll have no idea what you're talking about, right? You fast forward to a slightly more relative, Polaroid, right? Polaroid owned photography. They owned photography from top to bottom. The film, the cameras, everything was Polaroid, branded Polaroid everywhere. The hubris that they had when digital came on, when digital technology came around, they said, nah, that's not for us. There was infighting within the groups. They didn't evolve, failed, right? You can make that same story again and again with these mega companies that, because they're not working together, exactly what you're talking about, they're not working for a common goal, they're not working as a team, there's infighting within the business fails despite how large and how badass that business is. That's really, really incredible to watch that happen over and over and over. And what's so funny about it is, at the top, when things are when they're at their zenith, if you told anybody that works at those organizations that would happen, they'll laugh you out of the room. They'll think you're nuts. That'll never happen to us, right? But lo and behold, it's happened so many times throughout history. And I have some predictions that will happen to some companies that are so large right now that people would laugh at me if I said them out loud. You're probably guessing what they are. But based on some of these processes that you're talking about, where the team guys all are focused on a common goal and supporting each other, that's goal number one. That's why they're so successful. And the game they're playing is life and death. We're just talking about money. We can go maybe that. This is life or death world. So very different consequences to those actions, but just to really drive that point home and how important that is. So how did you, we're going to back up a little bit. How did you go and make the transition from SWAT to be doing more operational stuff overseas, right? Because SWAT is obviously domestic.
No, it's a kind of a crazy story, but what happened was, I left North Las Vegas. I was already doing overseas stuff anyway when I was, kind of moonlighting. And so I left North Las Vegas, tried for about a year to get my security consulting company that was busy in Mexico to get it really off the ground. It was a struggle. I had really no business background. And then I'm like, well, shoot, I gotta make money. So I was broke, came back, tested with King County Sheriff's Office in Seattle. That was an amazing 2 years. I only stayed up there a couple years, but it was the leadership that I was able to work with in Seattle at the time. The King County Sheriff's Office was incredible, and I had a really, really good experience there. Nothing like North Las Vegas in the call volume, and I was just on patrol, but I did learn some things there from leaders and stuff like that. I just really enjoyed that time. And then after that, I moved back to Utah. My parents served a mission for the Mormon Church as a mission president, meaning my father was in charge of 200 missionaries in Costa Rica. So they asked us to house sit. So we moved to Utah, and I started a company, a nonprofit called NFOS, the National Foundation for Officer Survival Training. And I just felt like the survival courses that were out there for cops, officer survival, were very subpar. Let me just say that. And my best friend in Seattle, we were on the motocross track one day together, and he had an accident and was paralyzed. And so when I left Seattle, we brought him with us to Utah and created this nonprofit so he would have something to do, because he still wanted to contribute. And when you're an athlete and you're a cop, your identity is your fitness, your physical ability to defend yourself. So while he was, trying to find himself, we created this company that he and I could work together. And we got federal contracts. We started getting contracts around the country and overseas, training on mental toughness, how to overcome mentally your worst moment. And it was awesome, man. We traveled around the country. Dude, we had so many guys that would come and speak for us. Dudes that should be dead. Their stories are insane. And you'd get a guy like Enrique Hernandez, who was speaking for us. This kid got shot 7 times at point blank range. He was a Las Vegas Metro rookie. He pulled out his knife because he lost his gun, and he stayed in the fight. And this is another podcast we got to have. But in spite of that crazy story that he would tell, someone at the end of the presentation from the crowd would come up and go, you need to talk to this guy. And we hear a crazier story. And then I go find that guy that was sitting in the crowd, because it was never the guy that it happened to that approached us. It was always a buddy.
Of course, always. Yeah.
And then I'm like, dude, what happened to you? And then his story is crazier than Enrique's. And I started to find out there are a lot of people that have this overcome mindset. They'll find a way. I mean, look, you've already probably met Jay Redmond. He, and I tell Jay, you're nothing special, dude. You got shot 7 or 8 times. Go talk to Mike Day. He got shot 26 times. Go talk to Enrique Hernandez. I mean, it goes on
Most
and on and
perverse
on.
contest ever.
It's crazy. But what's cool is you start to see some common denominators in these people, in these personalities. So I was writing about it. Nobody was publishing me. So I'm like, screw it. I'll talk about it from the stage. We're doing this. And then I'm at SHOT Show with a company you've probably never heard of. They were brand new at the time. I met the owner when he was working out of his basement. It was a company called Magpool. And Rich and I became good friends. That was early on in Magpool's thing. And I had developed something for police that goes on the bottom of a magazine. And Rich, he's funny. He goes, dude, you violated my patent. And he goes, but I'm actually going to create that. And I want you to sell it because I think it'll help officers. So instead of getting mad at me, because my idea, really, he had already thought of it. I didn't know that because I didn't even know what Magpool was.
Sure.
We produced this item, and I remember I was at the SHOT Show there, January of 2004, and this guy comes up to me and he says, "Hey, want to talk to you about the whole thing you're doing with mindset that you're teaching all over the country, and come to dinner with us tonight at Ruth Chris Steakhouse." And I'm like, all right. And I didn't know who he was, and turns out it was a few SEALs that owned a company called SOC. And they were in competition with Blackwater and Triple Canopy for high-end protection details, PSDs, over in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And someone had recommended them or recommended me to them. They said, this guy will be a good fit for you, even though he's not a military guy. He understands urban combat, and things were changing in that industry. And 7 days later, I'm in Iraq working with these guys. And again, dude, I think I'm one of the most blessed people on the planet who gets to go from doing what I was doing to literally working with guys in a war zone, legitimate war zone, who last week were Navy SEALs, and this week they've left that to become contractors.
Right.
I was the only non-military guy on that team. And the first probably 6 or 7 years of my contracting career, I was the only non-military guy I ever met on any of the high-end PSD teams. And, a lot of guys looked at me, just kind of like, dude, because they didn't know.
They probably give you a little stink eye in the beginning, right?
A little bit, but you know what? This comes down to another thing about human nature. It's called qualification. I will tell you this, Maddie, when he introduced me to other guys in the industry, he would say, this is my buddy, Dave. He's good to go. He's qualified. We've, been in some shit together, No SEAL is going to doubt that SEAL bringing me in is going to bring a guy in that's going to be the weak link or get him killed.
Right. Because they don't want to get killed. That's exactly right.
Right. So it's good thing about qualification, but, anyway, that's my story. That's how I got out there. And, real quick, just let me throw this out too, because it's such a unique story. People have a hard time swallowing it sometimes, which I don't care. The truth is the truth. But I've had so many people. So I get to work with a lot of corporations. I get to do speeches on what I learned in leadership. And also I talk about elite performance, individual stuff. And, you were asking earlier, and I know you've experienced this yourself. You were talking about these dips, right? These, when you're down and you're broke and things didn't work out. And I got to tell you real quick so that people can know this as we move towards the end of our time here. I talk to individuals a lot that are struggling, and I tell them, look, there's 2 things you need to be better at. You need to be a better quitter, and you need to be a better failure. And people are like, whoa, what are you talking about? And let me explain that, because I think this makes a difference. If you're someone right now that feels like you've hit a wall, maybe you're doubting yourself. You've been a good, performer, and now you're not. Or maybe you're someone that says, I'm tired of playing it safe. I want to learn what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and risk it all. Okay, look, be a better quitter. Name 3 things, write down 3 things right now that you could quit doing today that are holding you back. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about giving up. I'm talking about quit doing the shit that's holding you back.
Yeah.
And if you don't think you can come up with 3 things, ask your significant other. They'll give you 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right now.
Right.
And then the other thing that you have to do is you have to know that being a failure is okay. Every great successful dude had to fail over and over and over to get it right. You know,
Right.
fail fast.
Yes.
People that are good at failing, they're good at it because when they fail, they recognize it for what it is. It's a learning experience and they move on and they're not afraid to fail. But what you said in the very beginning of this whole thing, and I think what your whole podcast and your YouTube thing is based on, is guys, if you want to be successful, you have to know you're going to fail, and that's a risk. And people don't
Yes.
like being uncomfortable. When you fail, it's embarrassing.
Yes. 100%.
Even if no one sees it, you're still embarrassed.
Yes.
It's okay.
So going back to the truthisms that we're always trying to coax out from all of these different amazing guests, such as yourself, that we've had on, is these universal truths that anyone can apply to their life. And I will tell you, by far, the number one that we get pulled out of is this one right here. You will fail. You will fail a lot. And every successful person, whether it's the NFL players that we've had on here, the SEALs, the multimillionaire entrepreneur, the authors, you name it, is their success is built on a pile of failures. That's how it works.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
You fail, you go, oh, that hurt, not going to do that again. Oh, that one didn't work quite right. I should have done it this way. You do that enough times and you kind of hit the bumpers, right? On either side enough times, and eventually you're going to be successful. The question is, do you have what it takes to get up again and again and accept the fact that it's going to suck, it's going to hurt, you're going to be embarrassed? If you accept that, if you know it's going to happen, then when it does happen, you've already mentally prepared for that moment. You're like, well, this is going to suck. All right. You've accepted it, surrendered to it, as I like to say, and you've moved on. And if you can do that, you will always be successful in whatever it is, whether it's a successful relationship with your kids, your spouse, your business, training, it doesn't matter. That is everything in that. And it's really easy for me to sit here and say that, but it is really freaking hard for us to actually execute on that piece.
It is because, perspective is a choice, and our perspective, typically speaking, I'm generalizing, but we're like afraid of failure. Failure's got a negative connotation. But if you could shift in your mind and go, you know what, let's just say you don't have a background in SWAT, or you're not a former SEAL, or you're not a former, successful entrepreneur, whatever. That's okay. Start from zero, dude, because every time someone fails, they're zero.
That's right.
You hit the ground, you're on your face. And instead of being like, oh, here we go again. No, jump back up and go, dude, I'm okay.
Get back in.
I got it over with.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, see it. My grandson the other day, we were riding dirt bikes together, and he ate it hard in front of me. And he was crying, and I got off my bike and I lifted him up. He's got his dirt bike, and he's trying to be tough. And I lift up his shirt, and he's got gouges where he hit some rocks. Oof. And I'm like, dude, your first scars from riding. And then he's like, yeah, like you, because I got some scars. And all of a sudden, he just like, and now what does he do? He's excited to go tell his mom and dad, look,
yeah,
dude,
I earned
can't
this.
we be like that kid? Why can't we be like that kid? Don't be afraid of this shit. Look for an opportunity. If you go down hard, get up, lift your shirt up, look at it and go, all right.
Yeah. So one of the ways I like to phrase this to people, because I get asked to speak at all these conferences and what have you. And one of the ways I like to think about this is, let's play worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. I want you to try 1,000 times and you're going to fail 1,000 times. You're never going to have success. It's possible, right? There is a probability, albeit low, that you could try 1,000 times, 10,000 times and fail every single time. Okay, let's say that happens. Let's say you failed every single time. You never saw success ever. Now, while I don't think that could happen, let's just say that it does for argument's sake. Okay. So you're sitting on your deathbed you're about to pass away, your loved ones are surrounding you, and you think back on your life, and you had really two roads that you could have gone down. You could have gone down the very safe, very secure, got a job as an accountant, right? And you made your 57,000 a year, and you saved your pennies, and you didn't take any risks, and you passed away. Okay, you took no risk, you had no failures, you had no disappointments. I'd argue you wouldn't have a lot of upside either.
Mm-hmm.
Now the other guy, he's failed 1,000 times, never tasted success. When you're on your deathbed looking back at your life, who had a more interesting life? Who had a more enriching life, a more exciting life, a life with more memories to it, more things to think about? I would argue the person at worst case scenario, the absolute worst case scenario, the person who failed the most is going to have more friends, going to have more memories, more experiences, and a more enriching life, even when they fail, than the person who took the easy road and took no risks. 100 times. There's no way that you can make a story, an argument that says taking the safe and secure road is going to lead an enriching life. I will absolutely believe that it's the opposite. So if we agree on that premise, then you add the probability that if you keep going, you're going to be successful. Oh shit, man! Like, why wouldn't you do it? Is the bigger question. You're highly
and I think
to go that way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point here, and I would tell all of the people listening to this, especially if you're one that right now isn't, you're just trying to find yourself. Let me just tell you this: if you get up, you are successful.
Yes.
Every time you get up, you're successful. And success is not money, guys. I'm telling you, success, that is not the determining factor. Success is, do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like you accomplished something? And in the face of, failure, the fact that you get up, you still know you accomplished something that day. And it's interesting because this is a good segue into what Fight Back Nation is. Can I go that direction?
Yeah, no, I was going to lead us this way anyway. So perfect.
Yeah,
This is a good time.
This kind of jumps into that. I racked my brain for years on this mass shooting stuff that's going on, and I'm like, why can't we fix this? And I don't have time to go into it here, but at one point I designed this armored vehicle that actually is for going into schools. They've used it here in Utah County. It's been on over 400 missions. It's been shot through the windshield got hit recently, and the guy, the cop driving it, the bullet just ricocheted off. They've used it a lot, but so that was actually me trying to come up with a physical tool, that you could build and use. And here's where I landed. And I've explained this to, I think Lieutenant Colonel Grossman knows about it, John Guydick, Donnie Goodman, some of the top guys in the world on mass shootings. I've talked to them and I said, guys, here's what I want to do. I'm going to start going to schools and train teachers how to physically fight back an attacker. And they're like, teachers? They're loving, they're patient, they're sweet. You've got all these motherly qualities. And I'm generalizing, there's a lot of male teachers.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, it's for that exact reason. Because if you're a teacher, you understand Mama Bear times 100.
Right.
You would do anything for those kids.
Right.
And some teachers have used their bodies to shield kids in mass shootings. And so what I've come up with is this theory of, it's not going to be what has to happen. Look, I happened to be on the scene a few hours after the shooting in Sutherland Springs, Texas, a few years ago in 2017, I think, where this guy massacred all these people in a church. I was there. And I remember a news reporter asking me about 1 a.m. She said, when does this end? When do these mass shootings stop? And I said, they'll stop when they're not productive anymore. And she's like, well, what does that mean? And I said, listen, on September 11th, we had an airplane crash into one of the Twin Towers. And 20 minutes later, and again, I'm generalizing, right? I don't know the exact number. Another plane hit the other tower.
Right.
And 40 minutes later, a plane crashes into the Pentagon. But that fourth plane, you know what happened on that fourth plane? A bunch of untrained people that found out what was going on said, that ain't going to happen again. Not on our watch. Untrained, unarmed men and women attacked those terrorists. They kicked their asses. They killed them. at the cost of their own life, they drove that plane into the ground. We haven't had a successful hijacking of an airline since then. There have been many attempts to get in the cockpit since then. And in every instance, they've been stopped by civilians, by citizens, by passengers. It's a mindset change. When we finally flip the switch and go, you know what? Give me a little training, because that's what we do for these teachers. Show me how I can step up and physically stop this guy. And that's what we do. We've trained over 7,000 teachers now. And we have a lot of corporate clients. As a matter of fact, and this is a kind of a sick plug, but I just wrote a book about how to fight back against a mass shooter. And it's simple. I'm just like outlining it because people are having a hard time wrapping their brains around this. But I'm like, wait a minute. No trained police officers or Navy SEALs stopped those terrorists on Flight 93.
Right.
They were people that were willing to fight back, not just stand by and die. And so we're going out there and we're telling people, you know what, that's what we need to do, is we just need to train ourselves. We need to get this mentality of, I will fight back. And you would, if it was your child, right? If I had a guy, I was giving a speech once, a presentation about 200 people. And this guy said, and he was a big guy. And he said, dude, if you point an AR-15 at me, I know I'm dead. And I'm like, and he's my age. And in Utah, when you're about 50, you probably have 7 or 8 grandkids. That's the way things go here. So I looked at the guy. I'm like, do you have any grandkids? And he's like, yeah, I have a 6-year-old grandson. I said, okay, what if I point that AR at your grandson? And I just turned as if I was doing that. And in front of 200 people, he stood out of his chair and he goes, don't even bring my grandson into this.
Right.
And I'm like, what would you do? And he's like, I will rip your head off.
Rip your throat out. No question.
So I'm like, well, wait a minute. What is the difference? If I point at you, you give up. But if I point at your grandkid, because the motivation is that much higher, you don't even care.
Right.
You're going to jump over the 3 chairs in front of us and tackle me and kill me with your bare hands. It's in every one of us.
100%.
It's in our DNA. We don't know how to tap into it. We are willing to die for the people we love.
Mm-hmm.
Then why are people huddling and waiting to be executed in these mass shootings instead of saying, you come through that door, we're on you.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this switch of perspective. And we're trying to tell people, you already have that mama bear in you. It's in your DNA, all of us, men and women. You would do anything. You don't ever want to fight a mom. If you touch her kid, forget it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So,
I love that. It's so spot on. So it's a great analogy, but it's 100% because we do have that in us. All of us have that in us, and united, as you mentioned earlier, to kind of tie this back, when we collectively as Americans and really as sort of citizens of the world, collectively put our foot down and say, no, this not on my watch. You got to go through birth. It changes the game completely.
We have to be united, though. And that's, I'm not an author. I'm just going to tell you that. That's why I wrote this book, because people were like, we don't understand this. And I'm trying to get an audience outside of Utah. And so I'm like, I'm going to put it in super, super simple form so that everyone can understand what we're saying. Because the moment the light bulb goes on, they're like, yeah, dude, don't even think about threatening my kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start there. But like you just said, and you nailed it, Pierre, we come together and this shit will stop.
That's right.
Because it will not be productive anymore. And that's what we're trying to do. That's where we need to get. And it's not just out there on mass shootings. I think it's in life in general. Take that fight back attitude and put that inside your heart and say, listen, no matter what I'm going through, am I going to lay down and wait? Or am I going to get up right now and take the fight to the perpetrator? Whatever the perpetrator is in your life, whatever it is in your life, you are stronger and more capable than you think, but you got to be motivated.
Far, far more. And so if you're struggling being motivated, and I get this question a lot, like, hey, dude, do you wake up every morning super motivated? And I said, nobody wakes up every single day. That's number one. That's a myth.
Yeah, that's true.
What you're trying to do is just stack together enough motivated days that your motivated days far outweigh your unmotivated days. But that being said, if you're having trouble finding what motivates you, what you need do is stress yourself on purpose, right? Put yourself in situations of stress. You can just do this in your mind. You don't have to physically
Sure.
do it necessarily. And figure out what triggers that you have. And you just brought up one, right? Where the guy said, hey, I'm a big guy. You point a gun at me. I'm just going to put my hands up and call it a day. Point that same gun at my grandson. I'm going to rip your head off. Oh, well, hey, we found a motivator, right? So,
Yeah.
so let me give you a small example. I am lucky to eat well and drink red wine and eat steaks and what have you. And the problem is that I'm 41 years old, and if I just drank wine and ate steaks all day long, I wouldn't be here for my kids all that much longer, right? Those things, they're delicious, but they're not great for your body, right? Especially if you do them in excess. So I hate running. I hate running deep down in my bones. I hate running. And 5, 6 days a week, I wake up and I go for a 1 to 2 mile run. It's through the hills. I do it in the morning. It's cold up here in Boston. And I do it for 2 reasons. One is because I need to be there for my kids. My heart has to be in good condition. My cardiovascular system has to, do not pass go, has to be in good condition. I will not have a heart attack for my children. I don't care how much I don't like it. It's more important that I'm there for them. Full stop. That's it. So that's my number one motivation. My second motivation, and this is a smaller one, is to specifically because I hate doing it. That's exactly why I need to train myself to do it. Because when that little voice creeps up in your head and is like, stay in bed 5 minutes longer. Now you can do it tomorrow. It's cold out. It's raining. You got to, as I like to say, go fight the demon, right? Go fight that little voice in your head that says you can't do it. Those two are my motivation. Now, it might be different for each and every one of you listening, but those get me off my front porch and get me running down the street to do this thing that I know is good for me, which we all know running is good for you. Okay, great. But most of us don't run. That's not a good enough motivator. So what are my motivators? My kids and killing that demon, right? Killing that demon of the mind. And so it gets me to go for those runs as much as I absolutely hate it, right? So I love Fight Back Nation. Where can people find more out about Fight Back? Because that's something that we really need to spread the word about. And that needs to get a lot bigger than Utah and get throughout the United States and into the world.
Yeah, thank you. So fightbacknation.org, that's the website. And we do have an Instagram. It's at Fight Back Nation. It's we have a lot of fun on that as well. So there's a Facebook page, Fight Back Nation, as well, and we're growing it. What would really help is ask your school district, what is their plan. If you don't like the answer, get a hold of us and we'll help you out. We'll help you have that conversation. And again, like I said, we wrote a simple how-to fighting back against an active shooter called Victims No More. That's another good place to start, because like in Utah, a lot of people have purchased the book from us directly and then given it to school administrators. Or I just had two corporations. One of them was $1 billion company. The other does about 500 million recently. And they had me come out and help them with their program. I think OSHA is pushing for all these corporations to have an active shooter response program within the company as well. So we're just trying to get the word out. And like I said, fightbacknation.org is the website, and you can reach me. You can DM me directly on our Fight Back Nation Instagram as well.
And all of that will be linked in our show notes. Bringing it back to.
And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. The book is on Amazon too, so you can just go get it right on Amazon.
Perfect. And we'll also link to that as well in the show notes. So bringing back to Lieutenant Grossman and the conversation I was able to have with him that directly correlates to Fight Back Nation and what we need to be doing here, is he brings up this great example of fires in schools. He goes, listen, 1910, 1920, 1930, 1940, guess what happened? Kids would die in fires in schools because what fire suppression system did they have? Nothing, right? Everything was gas lanterns. Everything was made out of wood. Well, as we learned and as we evolved, what did we do? We put smoke detectors. We put sprinklers. We put fire extinguishers. We put non-flammable materials, whether that's non-flammable desks, chairs, paint on the walls. We use concrete over wood, right? So what do? We prepared. How many people know of school-age children that have died at a school fire? Nobody. Virtually zero,
Yeah.
right? It's as close to zero as it can be. Except we haven't made any of those steps when it comes to mass shootings with inside schools. We haven't done a single step, right? So with fire as a killer, which is terrible, we've done all of these steps to prepare for this thing. But with mass shootings within schools, we've done literally nothing.
You want to know the craziest thing? Here's the thing I'm trying to tell the world. How on God's green earth in a country like the United States of America do we not have a national standard? Cops do. Law enforcement's response to active shooters is amazing. It's
Right.
gone from 40-minute response to 3 or less here in Utah. Okay. And that's across the nation. These cops, these men and women are amazing. It's not them, it's us. It's us on the civilian side. School districts, every school district has a different plan than the other school district.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
it's crazy. How come we can't standardize what the response protocol will be? They get a budget and they all spend it differently.
Right.
It's insane. And then we have, you know, just a quick thing because I'm on a soapbox here, but then we have these people saying, dude, I'll sell you this bulletproof backpack or this super, you know, cool bulletproof door that slides. Dude, it has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. Physically, okay? They had great stuff, you know, in Newtown, and the kid shot the glass doors and went inside and killed these kids, okay? So it's not about the physical barriers. It's what is the protocol? What are we doing to stop this guy one-on-one physically as human beings? Right. That part of it is the most important part. 100%. And we don't have protocols for that. Everyone's trying to sell a product, and all the school districts are spending their money differently on products and programs. Yep. And we're just not on the same page.
I fully agree. And I don't want this podcast to devolve into a Second Amendment conversation, because that's just a whole can of worms. But one of the things I like to say all the time is reality on reality's terms. Okay. Reality on reality's terms means we can't go back in time and uninvent the gun. Can't be done, right? There's 330 million guns here in the United States plus. So in Canada, just recently, there was a mass shooting.
Yeah.
A person with little to no criminal background who seemed to be mentally competent illegally obtained a firearm in a country where firearms are almost impossible to get a hold of. And he went into a suburban neighborhood and went house to house to house to house. And it took multiple houses before the police were able to find him and take the suspect down, ultimately kill him. And that is a massive tragedy. However, it does illustrate your point perfectly, which is you had a person who illegally obtained the weapon in a place where that weapon is not available by and large anywhere, right? So, i.e., it's not the weapon, it's the motivation of the person. And had those people had some level of training like you're talking about, and really it really is the mindset more than it is learning some technique. It's really learning the mind and being able to adapt and overcome in that situation. They might have been able to prevent as much damage as happened. Not all the damage, but a larger percentage of that casualties could have been prevented. And that's what we're talking about. And that it kills me when we argue about, one or two people could still die because of this thing. Yes, one or two is still better than 30. Right. I hate when we get into these conversations of semantics.
Let me tell you, Pierre, let me just throw this out, because I'm sure we might be tight on time. If we're not, that's good. But let me tell you this. I can sit here right now and name incidents that no one knows about because they weren't sensationalized in the media, where people jumped in and defeated unarmed people, where they stopped a mass shooting. Okay. Because I will tell you, 99% of the people present during a mass shooting are unarmed.
Of course.
Okay. So I'm just saying, look, that's the people I'm focusing on. If you're unarmed, you can still fight back. Look at New Zealand. You know what people forget about the story of the mass shooting in New Zealand was the first mosque he went to, a guy attacked him. He threw some stuff at him and then attacked him. He emptied one of his rifles, threw it on the ground. That guy picked it up and chased him with it.
Right.
And he chased him off. He saved a lot of lives.
Yes.
People are not realizing that when you just get that mentality of yeah, I might die, but I am fighting back.
Correct.
It's unexpected. These
Yes.
guys walk in, even Grossman said it, they have that God complex and they do not expect resistance.
That's right.
And our culture in the United States, we believe the guy with the gun is the winner, typically. Right. But he's not all powerful. You have
Right.
to be willing to fight back. And if you have just a little bit of knowledge on how to do it, all of a sudden you're empowered. And we've trained over 7,000 teachers here in Utah, and they're the last people that want to fight a guy with a gun. But at the end of the training session, you should see them. They're like, all right, I feel good about this. Yes. It's awesome. Our feedback has been, we have a 1 through 10 feedback everywhere we go, and thousands of reviews that we've gotten. We're averaging a 9.8. You would think if the teachers didn't want to have this conversation that we'd be averaging, a 2.
Right. 2. Right.
Exactly. But what's happening is we're coming in there and we're not saying you need to have a gun. We're not saying any of that. We're just saying, hey, it's already in your DNA.
Yes.
You already got mama bear. We just want to give you a little bit of information that might help you be more effective if you had to. If, like you said earlier, always go to worst case scenario and say, okay, I'm still going to be all right.
Yes.
Worst case scenario, you fight. What is he not doing when he's fighting you? That bad guy? He's not killing kids. We're trying to buy 3 minutes here in Utah. The average law enforcement response to an active shooter is 3 minutes.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Anyway.
So this is a good note to go out on. If you plan for, whether it's in business, whether it's with fight back and defending your students, whether you're a SEAL or a law enforcement officer, if you plan mentally in your head the acceptance of these things potentially happening, you've mentally rehearsed this moment, whether it's a failure in business or something much more terrible in terms of an active shooter, your response in that moment is much more likely to be well thought out, or your likelihood of acting appropriately, it goes up exponentially, because mentally in your mind you've already planned for those worst case scenarios. What Dave's talking about is not this Herculean lift, right? These are thoughts, strategies, philosophies, practices that you can put in place that will significantly improve. Again, he's not talking about going Rambo and being able to defeat 10 guys here. We're talking about delaying the situation, rallying back, fighting back to allow law enforcement the time to get there and neutralize this position, right? These are very, very doable solutions, and you have that fight in you, whether it's during a tragedy of an active shooter, building your business, building deeper relationships with your friends, your family, your coworkers, your loved ones. So Dave, one more time, Fight Back at Fight Back Nation. We'll link to your book in our show notes. Follow up with you on the Instagram, slide into your DMs if you got any other questions. Anywhere else that people should go keep up with you?
No, that's it. Fightbacknation.org, and then the Instagram links. We'll also send you guys a link to a video that we made. It was funded by Workers' Compensation Fund and the University of Utah on how to survive a mass shooting in a work environment. And that video is for you to redistribute. It's for everybody. It's just information that may save your life. So we'll send you guys a link to that as well.
That's huge. Dave, I got to say thank you so much for being here. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you. For everybody out there listening, appreciate you. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.